we have today a very special guest, a gentleman who is very wise, and if you're familiar with the industry, you know of him already. Mr. Alex Beddoes, sir, welcome. Obviously, we've been chatting here for a second, but greetings. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you two?
I'm doing all right. Jacob?
Doing all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Like, my voice got fixed up-ish right around the time we did this, so I've been sick. I should be good now, though. So I'm doing a lot better.
We made it. Well, not that he needs the intros, but Mr. Alex Beddoes is an expert environment artist over at That's No Moon. Previously worked with Respawn, The Initiative, Counterplay, worked at ArtStation directly, as well as Decagon, who's an outsource specialist in the industry, just like us. And so welcome, my friend. It's great to have you. Jacob Norris also is my co-host today. You all may know him as the CEO, president, creator of all things beautiful here at Sierra Division. Jacob, how are you?
Nice. I'm doing all right. Yeah. Thanks for the intro. That's a nice one. Yeah. Just to kind of reiterate what you said about Alex as well. Like, I've known this guy for some time now, and actually seen the rise from the start of his career to where he is now. And I think that's why it's a perfect opportunity to be somebody to speak on, like, the state of the industry and breaking into the industry. So yeah, welcome, Alex. And it's really a pleasure to have you on the big name that you are now, sir.
We're not going to do that, but thank you for
we
having
could
me.
say,
I appreciate it.
Too late. Already happened. You can't take it back. Sorry, sir. It's live. It's recorded. Pretty sure Stephanie already has that clip. She's already posted it to YouTube. Wow, Stephanie, on it. I appreciate it. So today,
I don't blush easily.
we're looking to talk. Little fans. So today we wanted to talk to everybody just a little bit about state of the game industry, right? We've had some reports come out not too long ago. It's kind of been a big focus for artists. And so we wanted to talk about state of the game industry. Alex is going to give some great advice on maybe ways to break in to the industry. We also have a little special announcement for Sierra Division Academy for those of which have been following along with our online competitions, with our mentorship, etc. We're going to be making a little bit of expansion to our offerings, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. And then we want to answer all y'all's questions. And so hopefully y'all can shoot over those questions. Stephanie's going to be helping me keep track of our chat. And then we'll be helping me kind of pick out some questions from all of you all. So we can go ahead and get started. And so, again, primary topic for today, we really want to talk about the state of the game industry. And so for Alex and Jacob, for both of you, really, I feel like this is a good opportunity for both of y'all to kind of use this as a platform a little bit. Talk about where we are in the industry, and we can kind of go from there. What stands out to you, and what are some things that stand out to you currently in the industry?
Yeah. Do we want to focus maybe on anything specific to start, like potentially games themselves, like what types of games are hot, or like studios themselves? Like, do we want to touch on topics like, hiring and the types of jobs available, like the types of jobs that are getting more attention these days, the difficulties, like there's a few different topics I think we can move into.
Let's narrow it down. No, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a very good idea. And so let's start with, I think we were just talking about games, right? And games that we're a fan of. So what do we feel are some new genres and styles that maybe are coming out? And what do you think about the current state? We'll start with that. And then also I want to get into what it is like getting jobs in the industry currently. We do want to work towards all of that. Yes. So maybe start out with maybe something a little bit lighter. Let's talk about the current state of the industry and which direction you think it's going.
Well, I think one thing worth noting is I think we're in a bit of a stage of what's the word? Rebooting, I guess. I think we've seen the rise and fall of, like, you get like not fad genres, but you get genres that really dominate the market for a period, 5 years at a time. Battle royales, extraction shooters, MOBAs. At this point in time, I think we're still on the hero shooter genre, and as they rise and fall, people are looking for the next one. I think right now people are, after the success of Elden Ring, is like that Souls-like type games, either sort of the thing you're seeing a lot of studios look into. So you have like that side of things where it's like there's people trying to find the next big game style, like the genre the mechanics, but then there's also the fact that I feel like a lot of big IPs have sort of reached their natural conclusion. And if you think of some of the biggest sort of North American video game studios, everybody's sort of moving on to their new IPs. They're figuring out their new IPs. I mean, Naughty Dog's a great example. We move on from Last of Us 2. We now have this new IP coming along. And I think the state of the industry currently reflects that. Like, when you are starting a big new IP, it's really, really, really hard. You tend not to have a ton of, for example, entry-level roles, juniors. These sorts of roles are less prominent when you're at that stage of production. And I think that's been reflected, like, in last year. There's definitely less of those entry-level roles. And I think we're moving into a stage where, like, as these big studios start to ramp back up into their productions and they get that sort of conveyor belt machine going of a video game production, you'll see the roles sort of filter back out. So I think just to start off, I feel like that's something I've observed. Like, both people are trying to find the new mechanic and new genre people are interested in, and the big studios have had a bit of like a reset, and we're starting to figure their stuff out and get their new IPs going.
Yeah, at the same time, with some of the new IPs coming and like the way that studios are hiring as well, we're seeing more people having to go back into the office versus necessarily being like the remote work. I know there's still a lot of studios that are allowing the remote work, but there's been a big push from a lot of them to come back into the office. So then with that in mind, I feel like many people have said, okay, I'm just not going to go back, and even started freelancing. So then it's kind of opening up this gate to many more freelancers than potentially we had seen prior as well. Like it's kind of interesting knowing, like, yeah, as you said, like all the new IPs coming out, and even that's No Moon. I guess we don't really know a lot about what the IP is, but but in any case, I'm sure you guys
No
have seen it
spoilers.
too, and luckily, lucky enough that they've still allowed
Everyone in chat signed an NDA, right?
You guys are all cool. Everybody cool.
I mean, we don't know what That's No Moon is working on. It could be a new IP. It could be like a reboot or something. Like, it could be whatever.
I don't know what we're working on. I'm clueless.
I just make beautiful stuff. That's all I do.
Pretty much. That's the gist of it, I think. I leave it to smart people to figure out everything else.
Yeah. That's my approach in life too. Just let the people that know what they're doing direct us. I'll just kind of fill in the blanks as we go. Kind of to your guys' point, a lot of the reports that have been coming out about state of the industry have been talking about the rise of indie games as well. And so you talked about, Jacob, you just mentioned like people having to go back to the office. What do you think the primary driver for that is? Like, for studios, why do you think they want people back in the office? Is it a productivity thing? Like, that would be kind of my assumption, but what are you thinking would be the primary reasons why they're pushing for that?
So I would say like a big part of it does relate to this new IP aspect and kind of being the collaborative aspect that you get from being in the office. So like I can say firsthand, even just some of the small meetings that I'll have with people on the team where I've been in person with them, and you just kind of topics come up, or like you ask them to come over and look at your screen and like you share what you're working on real quick, or someone's walking by on the way to coffee and they spot something that you're doing, and it sparks ideas a lot more. You kind of work more in a little bit of a tunnel, I guess, when you're working from home more often. There's not as much of this banter and back and forth and kind of natural flow of share of ideas, which on the one hand, it does spark new creativity, especially if that's important for the new IP. But on the other hand, then this is something that's like, that people complain about work from home, and thinking you're just watching TV, or you're just off and about and doing whatever, and you're not working as much or whatever. But I honestly found that I get more work done at home than I did in the office because of this like back and forth banter. Sometimes I would just go to my friend's desk and like chill for like 30 minutes or an hour, and you end up talking about things completely unrelated to the game. So that basically, I'm trying to say there's like a bit of pros and cons to this pushback to being in the office, but I do think that it just allows for more free form conversation that you don't get as much when you're remote work.
I think one thing I would say on that is so there needs to be a willingness. So remote work's hard to get the collaborative stuff. I've been working remote since even pre-COVID. I was already doing remote work with North American studios. It was one of those things which, if you try to work like you used to, it doesn't really work. Like you need to adopt some new habits. And also the thing to remember is it's not for everybody. Like, I think there's a rhetoric that sometimes emerges of like, we have to do it one way or the other. And it's like, well, one thing works for you, but another thing works for another person. Like, and all the stuff you were talking about, like bantering and sharing of ideas and all that sort of stuff. There are solutions. Like, for example, me and my team, we will sit in huddles all day, like literally 17-hour huddles, where we're just like all talking. And when I say 17 hours, because we are also friends, we'll play games in the evening and stuff like that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're not doing 17 hours.
I'm like, that's a long meeting.
No. It's because
like, I'm just nodding. Like,
yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, we'll work a bit together. We'll take a break, play some games at lunch, work a bit more. Then, like, I might hang out in the evening and do personal work while I'm talking to the North Americans. But the point is that we'll share screens during the days. We're talking and hanging out pretty much all day, and that simulates like a sort of office vibe where people just share their screen impromptu, like, hey, can I just get a vibe check on this? And it doesn't feel out of the blue. Whereas I think if you try to work like we usually use Slack in office, where it would be like, hey, I'm going to DM you, can you come check out my work? Everything becomes formal. And it's like, this is weird. This isn't that casual. I'm just going to swing by your desk and see what you're doing. But then there are challenges. Like, for example, meetings we haven't really figured out because, and no studio has, like, this is really difficult because the way a meeting will go when you're in office is we have a meeting and we're talking and we only have like an hour and we talk and then we leave the meeting and it's like there's still things to discuss and you're on the walk back to your desk will carry on discussions or like go off and pull on threads and carry on discussions and solve problems. In like a remote world, that is something we haven't really solved, I don't think. Like, how do we get things figured out when we like things come up in meetings without them requiring another meeting and then finding room in a calendar and like all that kind of stuff. So on the remote side of things, like I think the communication side of things, like it requires a few pivots and workflows. And then also like there is, I guess, a time zone thing to consider. Like I said, I've been working with North Americans for like 7 years at this point. I'm very used to organizing my life around that. I know a lot of people who like have tried remote working with North American studios from Europe, and they struggle. Like it doesn't suit their lifestyle, and it's like that's fine. Like not every person will want to work that lifestyle. So I think remote work in general requires adaptation. It requires people to not try and force a square peg into a round hole. Like you have to be willing to pivot a little bit and change how you work a little bit. And I know like for us at That's No Moon, it's like worked really well. Like we've managed to make remote work with European, like we have a European pod. We have a lot of people all around the world and it's worked really effectively working with North Americans. But it does require some adaptation and some like forward thinking and innovation and like workflow practices. But so far it's been going well, touch wood.
It sounds almost like an operations. Oh, sorry, Jacob. Didn't mean to talk over you.
I was just going to ask if they've been like actively encouraging some of the workplace huddles and some of these kind of hangouts, or is that more something that you guys are just taking the initiative and a few of you are getting together?
It's something that I saw. So the problem is I am like you, Jacob. If I'm in office, I talk a lot. I'm very much a social butterfly. I like talking to people. I am a very extrovert person. And back at the counterplay days when I was still there, like I remember it was a case of trying to get people to hang out. And for me, I like to work and talk, and I think it came from COVID, because me and my friends all of us were no longer in office, would sit in a Discord call all day and work and talk and hang out. And I just developed that habit of being able to work and talk at the same time. That now every studio I go to is kind of my first priority before I even start thinking about tasks. It's like, right, guys, I'm going to sit in this huddle all day. And if anyone wants to come hang out, fantastic. Sometimes it gets adopted, sometimes it doesn't. So, like, a Respawn, for example, it didn't, people had their own way of doing things it didn't really take. But That's No Moon, like, now I consider a lot of my colleagues to be some of my best friends, and I know them better than most people because I speak to them every day. And it's not just about work. Like, we're talking about life, about movies, games, music, whatever. In fact, one of the things we started doing recently was starting Spotify jams, where one person will start a Spotify jam. This is my playlist, and we'll all listen in the morning. And then the next day we'll choose a different one, or like someone else will host it. And it's like, these people, it's the closest thing I've had to feeling like I'm in an office, and it is effective, because that thing you mentioned, Jacob, right at the beginning, of walking past someone's desk and just going, "Oh, wow, that's really cool." Someone will share their screen and like they'll ask the lead, like, "Hey, could I?" or ask me for a pipeline question, and I'm like, "Oh wait, can you go back to that? Like, could you, whoa, stop what you're doing. Let me see that. That was cool. You haven't mentioned this." And I'm like, then we'll all sit and talk about that for 5 minutes. And then we go back to what I was looking at. And it's like, that's the closest thing to that emergent conversation that you get in offices.
Yeah, that might be something we should try to like encourage or push more and talk about more, like throughout the different communities. Because if people are saying like, "Oh, you got to come back to office," and if it's related to the new IPs or creativity and stuff, like sharing examples of this, and hopefully getting people to understand that with the right mentality, the right group of people, the right like encouragement from management or the studios, that it is possible to have these nice sessions of sparking ideas and sharing ideas, and still some of that collaboration that like maybe management or people higher up are getting stuck in this backwards mentality, thinking like, "Oh, well, we've been doing this for 50 years and this is how you do it," So like, if there's just something visible where you can like show these examples, then that would be great. Because some of the people in the chat are even talking about like, is it something that we would even encourage to have somebody like move across the country to try a job that you may actually end up getting laid off from? Like, is it still worth it, or should they just be looking for remote work? Like, how big of a risk is something like a big move nowadays compared to how it used to be?
You're talking to someone who is very set in their ways of liking remote. I am. Look, it's down to the
appreciate you
person, right?
announcing
Like
the
how
bias.
important. Yeah,
That's
well,
good.
I loved being in office, and we had our LA party. We went over and like checked out the office, and part of me's like, man, if I lived in America, I would be in office every day. But like, there's life to consider, and like, it's just hard for me. I feel weird giving this advice because I feel like a hypocrite, because I spent pretty much all my 20s like no life in my career, and now I'm finally starting to find some balance to it. But I can't say to people like, "Oh yeah, like don't make sacrifices for your career," because that's not good, because there's more to life. But it's kind of like what I did. I'm just not saying this is not necessarily the best idea. I think one of the problems I have had with not have in this remote conversation is the industry is a meritocracy. Like, unfortunately, that is just the nuts and bolts of it. If you have really good art and you're a good person, you get hired. And the studio it's like, what's the weight of your ability and your value compared to like, okay, do I want to bring this person? We would rather you in house, but you're saying you want to be remote. Is this person worth us compromising on that specific beat? Am I willing to compromise on having this person in house and have them be remote? And you have to be very realistic with that. Like, how much can you argue for yourself to like say remote. Now, not all studios will do that. Obviously, studios allow for remote. Would I move across the world for like a job and stuff? I don't know. I don't know if I could move country for like contract work. For full time, of course, I think full time's different. Full time's there's a bit of security involved and it's a little bit easier. Could I move across the world for a 6-month contract? I think you're asking a lot of somebody. And maybe as a younger person, it's a little bit easier. Like you haven't set roots down yet. I think if I was like a young single man, maybe I could move across the world and go on these little adventures. But when you have like other people in your life and you have a home and all that kind of stuff, I think there's a level of responsibility you need to take to that decision.
Yeah, it's probably something that we can't just say like one size fits all, and everybody needs to really consider their own given scenario. Like, I can say for myself, just when I had started, like my very first job, I might have mentioned this in the previous live stream, so people will hear this again. But starting at Insomniac, it was a contract position, and it was only 6 months. But at the time, I was just out of college, right? So I don't have kids. I don't have like any responsibilities. I just pretty much like I needed to find a job, and there was a bit of a risk like moving to a whole new city and like picking up my life at that point at least and trying something different just for a 6-month contract without knowing if it was going to last longer. But ultimately, because I had that more freedom to try it, I think it was a great opportunity to learn a ton, not only about games, game creation, but then also about like myself and understanding like being on my own and like just the whole aspect of growing up and being an adult, I guess. So perhaps for the younger folks that it would be less of a risk to try it. Less of a risk in the sense that you're not moving your entire family over and you're not moving your whole life over, then I would kind of encourage that actually, because it does open up a lot of new potential avenues and even new experiences, and all that kind of gets used not only in your career and your life and just a lot of different ways of things. So yeah, there's definitely risk to it. You don't know if it's going to be like worth it. But even if it's a bad experience and it ends up being terrible and you hate not only the studio, but maybe living on your own or whatever happens there, then that's another life experience you can learn from, right? Like as much as it sucks, like try to just take the lessons that you can from it and still find the different experiences that have helped you within it.
I'm a huge dork for like self-improvement stuff. And so, yeah, I think that the journey, whether it be within the realm here or elsewhere in life, I think just kind of making that jump sometimes just it develops character no matter what. Like you have to learn, like you're taking that next step. And so what's the step after that going to look like? Part of figuring that all that stuff out, I think, is character building. I think that that's just a good thing overall for a person, just in general. Get yourself out of your comfort zone, I guess, is one of the ways that people like to refer to that. There was a good question actually in chat here real quick. Somebody was asking, is that common for studios to hire out of country? From Nabir Khan, thank you, sir. I'm assuming, sorry, don't mean to assume the gender, the individual. But bringing foreign talent in for a short amount of time, like they'd be shorter contracts, like 6 months, a year, something along those lines. I would imagine that a studio would just take whomever's willing to go there. But is this something that either of you have seen in the industry as far as people coming, like traveling for distance and doing it like a little adventure, like you kind of described, Alex?
Oh, sorry, if you wanted to say something to this.
I mean, I think Europe is very popular, like between European countries. I have not seen it. Europeans going over to America purely for visa reasons. Visa stuff is expensive, it's difficult, it's messy. That being said, the distance for me to travel from like say here to Germany is like for you guys traveling state to state. Like so, to me, even internally within your own country of North America or US, like you're going to. The commitment is still just as big as distance. In Europe, a bit more common. Like a year contract, we've brought people at previous studios. We brought people over from Europe. I've seen my friends go over to Europe for work, for contract work. So, yeah, I think Europe to North America less common, but within both those land masses, I think is fairly common.
Yeah, I even said saw someone asking or saying it might be more difficult coming from like third world countries to other countries as well, and even that I've seen people do it and definitely learned quite a bit from it, or used it to their advantage too, because in some cases they were escaping like a difficult country scenario that they were in, and so even if you're able to escape that for a portion of time and be able to have that opportunity, it might lead to something else. So you're still taking a step towards trying to not only better your life, or hopefully just then your situation that you're in at the time. So it it can definitely be scary, but there's ways to make it less scary also. So like if you're moving to that new country, you can try to find apartments or studios that are already furnished, so you're not like having to go through the process of buying all of your stuff from scratch, and then if it doesn't work out, then you have to move away from that, and then need to try to like sell everything or bring it with you. So there are ways to at least make it a little bit easier and a little bit less scary if you can consider the best options for what would work for you in those situations.
So now, in light of that, obviously, we're talking a little bit about the state of the industry currently, and that being job volatility. And so it's a thing. Recent release from our friends at GDC, they released a state of the industry type report. They're talking about 1 in 10 of the people that they reached out to and got responses from were laid off in the industry. And so, how much do you think that should weigh into people's decisions where they decide to go to a studio? And what kind of advice would you guys give, given the current kind of state of where we're at in the industry with layoffs being so prominent and things that maybe you guys have noticed and speak to? That'd be great. Just hear some thoughts on that.
I think there's two separate like sort of advices I would
Yeah.
give depending on the situation. Because there's people who are trying to enter the industry, and there are people who are dealing with layoffs. I think for people entering the industry, like unfortunately this conversation comes up on mentorships. It's always a difficult conversation where they say, hey, the industry has next to no entry level jobs, and what should I do? And my advice has always been the same, because it's what I did. Because in the early 2000s, 2010 round time, like there was another crash back then in the games industry, had a really rough patch. And what I did is, I advised try and get a creative job. I worked in mobile app design. I worked at illustration at one point, in iGaming, in serious games, where I'm not only using the tech, but I'm also using work practices. I'm learning to work with programmers, producers, leaders, and that's better than nothing. Experience is experience, and it's still valuable. So for the first like 4 years of my career, that was what I spent myself doing while I level up my portfolio and develop my portfolio. Like, because at the end of the day, bills are bills. We need to live. Like, you need to get a job. Do I think you should just like try and be unemployed and develop your portfolio? Like, that's high risk. Maybe that I wouldn't discount the value of experience of working in creative fields. I think it also makes you probably a more rounded person. I do think people who go straight from education into the industry have a very myopic view of the game development, and I think it's not the worst thing experiencing a few different workplaces and styles of workplaces that aren't just AAA. I think it makes you a more rounded dev. You have a bit more of appreciation for the types of people that exist in this industry. It's not just, I am a materials artist, I am a gameplay engineer, I am a designer. It's like when you work in indie or mobile, you're everything, and you deal with like a very wide variety of people. Now, for the layoff side of things, I'm not saying I'm more optimistic, but for me, the hardest part of this is getting your foot in the door into that first job. That's like the most difficult thing in this entire process. And if you did it once, the next time will be easier. Like if you've already, think of it like a vetting process. If you've been hired once at a studio, the next studio will say, well, they worked there, they got through that interview process, they've worked in the industry. This is less of a risk than this person we have no context on. So I'm a bit more optimistic for people when it comes to like when they say, what if I get laid off? I'm like, if you get laid off, I believe you can get another job. Like, you did it once, you can do it again. You're clearly a capable enough artist. I'm not saying it's not nice. I've been laid off. It sucks. It's not the most enjoyable process in the world. But for me, yeah, the difficult thing is entering the industry. And I think I'd advise against people sort of having a very tunnel vision focus on, I want to work in AAA in like gigantic studio, and they ignore all these other options. These other options don't have to be your life. Like, you could spend a year there while you develop into the next place. You can always leave and go to a better studio. Like, that's always an option. I think that I do think the advice, because the first advice doesn't apply to the layoff side of people. So that's where I'd sort of draw the line on that particular thing.
Bonecracker put in a pretty good go ahead, Jacob. I want to hear yours first, and then I'll hop over the comment.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to touch on something Alex was talking about then. So if people were to go kind of the sidestepping route where, they're still getting experience, but it's not necessarily AAA or the first type of job they're looking for, a lot of times the reason that people say that they wouldn't want to do that is then, they don't have like this extra time to continue to focus on like enhancing their art or enhancing their skills. Like, is there any way around this, or is it pretty much like you just try to still take the experience you can get from the non AAA jobs and apply it towards what you're doing? Or do you just work a lot and like add extra hours to the end of your day and keep?
Yeah, you're talking. This is a bad person to talk to about this. I am not the most empathetic with this because, okay. So long and short of it is, you're gonna work extra hours. Like, I feel like this industry has an upfront cost. Like, there's a lot of extra hours required at the beginning to get you there. Because also you're in a rat race. Like, everyone is working pretty hard, and like I said, it's a meritocracy. If this person has like 3 killer pieces in their portfolio because they've cranked out a bunch of extra hours, then they're probably going to get ahead of you. Like, my experience was, I was originally working in construction, and like I was trying to be a professional rugby player, and my issue was I wasn't really getting very, very far because I weren't putting enough time into my career development. I knew I wanted to work in games industry, but it's like, I think I was like, there's 26 hours a week dedicated to like just rugby. There was like, I was probably playing like 30 hours a week playing video games. I was only putting like 5 hours a week into like, I'll do some portfolio work. And it wasn't until like there was a very key, like pivotal moment in my life where I was like, all right, I'm going to quit rugby. I knew I wasn't going to play like for England or anything. So I was like, all right, I need to make a very reasonable decision here. So I quit playing rugby. I cut down the amount I played video games. I adjusted a bunch of things in my life to allow me to do more portfolio work. And I didn't reap the rewards of that decision for another 2 years. Like, that's the other thing. Like, if it was easy, you have to have faith in the process a little bit. And like, it'd be easy to have faith if it just happened like that and instantly I had a job where I wanted to be. But like, I didn't see the return on investment for 2 years. So it's like 2 years of like paying that extra cost in hours before I got in. So to that point of like, well, what if I get a job and I have less hours? It's like, you have to make some sacrifices. You're going to have to probably cut back a little bit on some of your social activities. I'm not saying there's a really good analogy. I can't remember his name, but he made this analogy of like, life is like you're juggling balls, glass balls of rubber balls. And his whole thing was like, work is a rubber ball, social activities is a rubber ball, but like family are glass balls. And if you drop one of them, it smashes. Now, I disagreed with that because I was like, well, life's more complicated than that, until I saw a tweet from a writer, and again, I'm forgetting her name, but she described it as, you're not juggling 5 balls, you're juggling 50. And say there's 10 work balls, some are plastic, some are rubber. Same for like family, some are glass, some are rubber. And now, what's more important, silly sock day tomorrow at school for my daughter, or this key project that was meant to be delivered by the deadline tomorrow? Unfortunately, the project's probably more important. Same comparison, what's more important, my brother's wedding or doing extra portfolio work? I can probably drop the portfolio work and I've got like some level of like common sense needs to be applied to this, but like the long and short of it is, yeah, you're gonna have to do some extra hours. You have to make some sacrifices. You do reap the rewards later, though. Like in order for me to maintain my job, I do not need to crank out 20 hours a day to keep my job. Like once you have a job where you want to be, you should be relatively safe. Now, when layoffs come around, one would hope that your work previously at your previous studios would carry you. If not, you may be back to the drawing board a bit. You might need to just do a portfolio piece to like demonstrate your ability as an artist. But I do believe that, yeah, to your question, Jacob, yeah, bit of extra time. Again, I'm the worst person because I kind of went a little bit too far down one side of sacrificing and all that kind of stuff, my time. So I'm maybe a bit of an extreme example, but overall, yeah, you're going to have to put some time in. You're muted, Jacob.
Here's an interesting thought experiment considering like that idea of putting in the extra time to work on your portfolio. So say you are hired into like a more indie studio. They hired you contract, but they say there's a potential for like more full-time work if then they see that you're working hard and you're creating like a lot of great content. That extra time in your day, then you could be putting that towards the studio, trying to create that additional like value in yourself with them specifically, or working then on your own personal portfolio pieces. So like in that's a tricky situation. Which one do you focus on in that case?
So good question. If it's me let's say that's my first job, I'd say do both. I'd say you because it's not a sustained effort. It's not sustained effort is the way I see it. Like, oh, I need to secure, say it's a 6-month contract, and I'm 4 months in. Like, I'm thinking, oh, if, like there might be full time. Could I graft for 2 months? Probably. Now, I'll probably take a bit of a backward step. Like it's common sense, right? Like, oh, there might be I can take the foot off the gas on portfolio work for 2 months and focus on making sure I have a salary in 2 months. That's not the end of the world. Like I would say, make sure you have a salary properly. You can still tick over. You can still, I'm not saying you have to work on your portfolio, but you can, in your evenings, instead of watching TV series, watch tutorial. That's what most of my like downtime was in my early 20s, was watching podcasts, watching tutorials, rather than trying to output art, because there does come a point where like you just get brain fog and you just physically can't anymore. Like the amount of effort it takes to do something gets more and more difficult. So my wind down was, watch some tutorials. So maybe that's the same. You work really hard at work, and then your evening is, okay, rather than watching a TV series, maybe I'll just try and just brush up and absorb some knowledge if I can. And you probably won't. I'll be honest. I'd say 20% of it would get in and the other 80 would go in one ear and out the other. But it's better than nothing. But so to sum up your question, I think I'd focus for 2 months on making sure I have a salary in 2 months rather than roll the dice, because that 2 months at the end of the day isn't going to affect your portfolio that much, and it isn't going to delay things that much, really.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of funny because I would almost, it's probably bad advice, at least for me, coming from like a studio owner where, I want my guys working hard and the team always putting their time towards the company, right? But like telling people, I would actually say almost putting the value in yourself is the right way to go, because you don't know for sure if you're going to be kept on afterwards. Like we don't know the state of the industry, if they're going to have those jobs afterwards. And so I'm not saying like slack off at work and don't get your work done or don't deliver the deadlines, but like I would almost find it to be more important to make sure what you are doing for yourself and your portfolio and the people that throughout the industry, even the people you're working with there, that you're continuing to kind of like create that value for yourself, so that then the value that you're building for yourself is building like your brand as well. And that brand not only seeps into the studio that you're working at currently, but if the unfortunate does happen and you do get like laid off, or your contract doesn't stick around, and you're not kept on afterwards, then you put that time in to work and into your brand where you're able to look for something afterwards. Hopefully it brought more attention to you. It brought more like eyes on your portfolio. It brought more value to your brand. I guess that's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if it's, it sounds like, I know you would just work on everything constantly and just like basically working 24/7. But if there had to be a choice between the two, that's
if you're going to put a gun to my head, if a gun to my head, you might, 50-50 roll the dice, you're going to lose your job or work on your portfolio. Okay, yeah, I'm probably going to work on my portfolio. Like, it's, I haven't been on the receiving end of this. I have seen people on the receiving end of this, and I've always got like an axe to grind. I'll be honest. When someone's like, "Hey, we might have a job for you," I'm like, "Might's not a good word." There's a few words that should not be in the English dictionary. Might, good, probably, all words I hate. Like, because it's just like, yeah, you might have a job, or you should have a job in a bit. It's like, wait, what do you mean should? I either do or I don't. Like, I have to make plans. Like, I have bills to pay. So yeah, I guess if you can flip a coin for it, then I'd say definitely work on yourself. You have to assess the situation, right? Like, if someone says, "I'm almost certain you're going to have a job," like it's 99% sure, then you can probably work on your portfolio. You don't have to worry about it. Or if it's like, "Hey, it's a choice between you and this other dude, and we just don't. This got done to somebody. We don't know who we're going to keep. One of you's getting laid off, and we don't know." And it's like, this is working in iGaming. In iGaming, it's scummy as hell. They're like, we're going to lay off 4 artists in 2 months. We know in 2 months we're going to lay off 4 people, and we're going to only keep 2 of you. And it was like, and they were told that on a Friday afternoon. They were just told that, and they had to deal with that over the weekend and come back.
Dude,
and
it's like the scene from Batman Returns. He breaks the sticks in half. He's like, "Hey, we're having tryouts, but we can only keep one of you." And then you break a stick in half.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's like, dude, what are you telling people like that right now?
And funny enough, actually, that was actually a really interesting moment, because one of the dudes was just like, I've been in the industry for like 20 years. Like, this dude was like really experienced. He's just like, "Fine me then, fine, whatever." And he just carried on doing his business. And he knew he can get another job. One of the dudes really liked that job, and he was also really experienced, and he kind of went above and beyond. And then 2 of the younger people both just went really hard and tried to keep it. And it was one of the younger people was let go, and the experienced dude who didn't really care was let go. And it was just like, you actually did it. Like, you actually followed, because when you hear it, you're like, surely they don't mean it. And then they did, and it was like, and also, by the way, anyone who's like a studio thinks about this, if they're running a team, don't do that, because it basically led to like the entire team leaving, and was just like, "Oh, screw you guys, like we are so done." And they had a mass exodus because of it. And it's like, it was such a scummy way to handle it. But that's the iGaming industry for you, unfortunately.
So if you ever hear someone say like it's between the 2 of you, then you just immediately say like, "Well, all right, well, fuck this. I'm gonna work on my portfolio." And
exactly,
you guys aren't a place I want to work at, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. I think at that point, then you treat yourself almost like an asset, like what you guys are describing, and put some investment into yourself. I think that's such a good idea. Such a good idea. It doesn't matter where you are. That's just such a good approach. There was a couple questions in the chat that were specifically about what you guys just covered, but just to acknowledge them. How do you break into a bigger studio when you start out at a smaller studio? Either whether you worked freelance or if you did so at indie studios. I think you guys did a pretty good job of describing, just invest in yourself, build your portfolio, put in the time. But is there anything else that you guys would elaborate on that, just towards their questions? But I think you guys pretty much covered most of what I think the answer to that would be. Like breaking into the AAA games from the indie or freelance sector.
Have good AAA quality art. Like, pretty much it. Like, have really good art on your portfolio that demonstrates AAA pipelines. Like, I think that's pretty much all you need to do. Like, that's the thing. It's not like you need a special qualification to work in AAA. Like, it's just, I use the same pipelines as you. Like, that's one of the things I advise people, like, follow the pipelines you want to work on. But yeah, it's like, here's a portfolio piece. It uses all the pipelines you use, and it's done to your quality. Pretty much. First steps, I think, probably get you there.
What do you think, Jacob?
Yeah, that's solid advice. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about in the AMA last time as well, which is like look at the studio you're trying to get into or the quality of the work from wherever you're trying to work at. Check out some of the artists' portfolios that work there, and if you can do your best to get as close to that quality as possible, then that's going to give you the best chance to get there. Even if you're lucky enough, like reaching out and just seeing if anybody would be willing to mentor you, or if there are mentorship opportunities for people working at those studios. Yeah, schooling classes. If it's more difficult to just approach someone, and say like, "Hey, will you mentor me?" Maybe they're already offering it, or maybe other people that are similar in style or similar in quality that you may not be as familiar with, but are still working at these big AAA places. They might be doing something that could help you.
So talking about breaking into the industry, we're talking about for some new folks maybe that are just trying to get the experience. How much do you think it's important for them to kind of develop like a following and to get embedded it into the community? Like, what do you think is going to be? How important would you say that is? And comment maybe a little bit about that.
It's funny because I think I built my portfolio on ArtStation, but unfortunately, it definitely breeds a mentality of, well, this AAA artist has this many followers, so therefore I need that in order for me to get into AAA. I will say, like, also I love any portfolios ever submitted to me. I want it on ArtStation. It's just it has all the information I need in order for me to like review your portfolio. But I'll tell you the one thing: I can't remember a single time in an interview or looking at someone's portfolio, I once looked at the follow account. Like I've never looked at someone's portfolio and gone, damn, like only 100 followers. Okay, well, you're not going to be worth looking at. And I'll tell you why. It's because some of the most incredible artists I have ever worked with, and I feel so guilty about this. I remember I'd make a judgment because really early on I cared about following, and it was so dumb because this person would join. I'm like, I've never heard of you, and I have no idea who you are. Like, okay, I don't really care. And then I like work with them, and I'm like, this guy's literally like a genius. Like, it teaches me so much. I learned so much from him. I'm like, oh, you just don't care about your online presence. Some of the biggest G's in the industry, some of the most amazing artists do not have an online presence, and they are able to still be killers. I think social media and that whole having a social media following, like, if you put it this way, if you have a choice between making a piece of art that isn't really suitable to AAA, but it looks really pretty and it does well looks really good on your phone and it's going to get like lots of likes, versus making a solid piece that really shows off like pipeline and all that kind of stuff, and maybe doesn't do as well on social media, do the thing that doesn't do well on social media but will get you a job. Like, I have interviewed a couple of artists who have very big followings and make beautiful art. They follow zero pipeline. They have a workflow that they're able to generate decent looking stuff very, very quickly. And to an untrained eye or to like someone not in the industry, they'll be able to see it and like, and that's really cool. And then you interview them and you're like, okay, do you know like this pipeline or do you know this pipeline? No. Okay, I don't know what job I have for you. The games industry isn't about making pretty lovely like pictures. We're making a video game. It's way more complicated than that. So overall, okay, I'm going to make one small caveat. I think in the upper echelons of followings, I think some studios have in the past cared about that. I can't speak whether they still do, but I've definitely heard plenty of stories of, oh, we're going to hire this person because they have a huge following. Now, this is not for junior level roles and all that kind of stuff. This is for like leadership roles or seniors or principals, where they're like, oh, we want like that big name at our studio because big names do bring talent. But for entering the industry, you should not care less. I mean, also at that stage, like, still, I don't think it makes that big a difference. It's a 1%er. Like, you still got to have a killer portfolio first. But at the end of the day, yeah, like, you shouldn't really care. Your following will come because you have a good portfolio, I guess is what I would say. Like, your big
Let it be
social media
organic.
followings are a byproduct. Yeah, it's a byproduct of like being a good artist. You don't aim for the big followings. Like, that's not how it works. You're doing it completely backwards. And by the way, I've made this mistake before. It's one of the early mistakes I had in my career, like chasing the followings and all that kind of crap. Like, it's a waste of time. You have better places to spend your energy. Is the long and short of it.
I like that.
That was a ramble.
Yeah, like chasing the following versus just doing what you love oftentimes doesn't produce near as good of artwork. You don't get the opportunity to really learn and grow as much, because then you're kind of just like seeing what's popular and trying to redo that, versus if you're just focusing on like what's your passion, or maybe you want to learn about something very niche that you think isn't interesting, but that's how people have made some of their portfolios super interesting, is by focusing on what they would assume is niche, but then turns out to be like really exciting for a lot of other folks. Like, who would have thought the very first time somebody created a material ball, right? That like that would have actually become something that was popular. Like, they're like, oh, I just love making textures, but like I can't show this off, and no one's going to be interested in just seeing one single texture when there's these people creating full environments and these beautiful concept art, and then they post the material ball just because it was their passion, and then turns into this massive Alex Beddoes character, or like
you don't get to say that. No. You don't get to leapfrog from the guy doing it. I think it was Josh Lynch who did it first. You don't leapfrog from Josh Lynch doing the material balls to me, because there's like 18 different people between me and Josh who all did it way better than me. Like Daniel Tiger, Ben Wilson, these guys. They're the ones who did it better, and they did it better too.
But the idea is still there,
Yes, I agree with your. I agree with the notion.
Yeah, but I understand. It's tough to take a compliment sometimes.
It is. No, that's the masculine way, dude. That means that's what men do. Is we just go. I don't want to hear compliments. La 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 la. I only want to hear insults. I don't want to hear anything.
yeah. Just send it right back the other way.
Yeah,
I love it. So, a question from somebody in the audience. Chris sent us a question about he has an internship coming up next year, and he's okay with obviously working from home, but he's heard that some people, some studios prefer people who have in-office experience versus the work from home experience. Would be doing a job from work from home before going into an office job hurt the chances of getting that office job? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I don't think so. I'll be honest. I don't think I care. Yeah. And again, I'll come back to the thing of it's a meritocracy. I'll pick the guy who has the best portfolio and is the best game dev. You work at home, work in office versus remote doesn't really factor in. It's like a 0.5% affecting thing, and if you've screwed up on all the things before it, that's not going to save you, unfortunately. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, unless you're an asshole, you're going to be fine in an office if you can work from home too. Like,
yeah.
Do people hate being around you?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, all my colleagues right now are probably saying that right now, like, oh, Jesus, yeah, that's Alex.
The comment section.
I'm telling you, like, I don't think they're watching it. I don't think anyone were watching, but if they did, they would be talking so much shit right now. I know it.
I wish they were here. Just to make it a little bit fun. Not because I want to talk shit on you, but just because that would be funny. Just so people with the inside scoop. There's a really good question in the chat, and it's actually a pretty good segue for us. And so I wanted to read this question here real quick, if y'all don't mind. Alina, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Working full-time currently in an indie studio after graduating in the summer. Very grateful to be working in the industry, but would love the opportunity to level up personal work, especially towards AAA standards. They're finding it hard to find a full-time job with everything else in life, that being gym, general life stuff. Does anyone have advice on how to spend time, limited time, learning art efficiently? And you talked a little bit about this earlier, Alex, and so I think this is maybe a chance to maybe elaborate a little bit more. I'm used to working on studios projects uninterrupted just from school life, and so I'm finding the switch to be difficult. And so just wondering where you guys find the time and kind of maybe some more advice on how to kind of start to get into the industry and what it takes to kind of break into it and get to that skill level, I guess, too.
Yeah, I think a level of there's a level of research I think you probably need to do, a level of like really figuring out like, because the industry is a big thing. Like it's a very broad term. Even the term environment artist is broad. It can mean 10 different things depending on which studio you're at. The question of like stylized versus realism, that question straight away like falls apart. Like, well, what type of realism? Do you want sci-fi? Do you want fantasy? Do you want post-apocalyptic? Whatever. I think if you spend some time like researching exactly where it is you're trying to go broadly, find the artists who work on those projects, browse ArtStation, search God of War, search Last of Us, Destiny, whatever it might be, Halo, like see the pipelines they use. And it helps clear out the noise, because I feel like whenever I feel like I don't have time, it's because there's too much noise in my head. It's like, do I do this or do I do this and do I do this? And then you get decision paralysis and you don't do anything, which is I have felt like victim to, and I'm sure everyone else has. I think you need to spend sacrifice a little bit of time in researching where you want to go, what pipelines the artists use, the processes they use, and then it makes it a little bit easier and more focused, because then it's like, right, I just need to learn these 5 pipelines, these 5 workflows this artist uses, and it's a little bit easier to like account that time for it, versus I could learn anything. I will learn Houdini as this general term, and it's like, you don't need to learn everything about Houdini. You need to learn one specific pipeline, and it's a lot easier and more digestible to do that and more focused. And I think that's why to sort of sum up the question is just you need to focus in and kill some of the noise surrounding your decisions. And I think the time will find itself, because suddenly this one tutorial about this one pipeline I need is an hour. Okay, I can find an hour over the course of a few days. You don't need all the other stuff. And I think that's something that helped me a lot. I'm an overly pragmatic person anyway, but I think just researching and focusing in helps make decisions easier and finding time easier.
Yeah, is there any way that makes it better to like prioritize, I guess, what you want to work on? So say you see an artist, you want to be able to match the style or the quality that they're working on. Like how do you first determine, like, I guess, what's the priority to learn the texturing aspect, or what's the priority to learn the modeling aspect? Like what guides you into that? And because of that kind of decision paralysis, is there a good way to put it in front of you somehow to be able to just set it up and say like, okay, I can see why this is the most important, and have that kind of organization for yourself?
Oh, I'm someone who lived in Notion at one point, and I moved my life from Notion now into Miro. I'm a very visual person. I journal a lot as well. Like any ideas I have to like write down and just get out into the world and out of my head. I think have it like, for example, just that example you gave, Jacob, like fine, find a level. I keep using God of War as an example just because my most recent mentee, I taught them they were pursuing that. But it's like, find an artist, they have like, here you have to sort of reverse engineer stuff. So it's like, here's my portfolio piece. Okay, how do we get to this? We don't know. Then they normally share their materials, their scoops, their the behind the scenes, the whips. You need to sort of get all of that out in front of you and go, okay, for me to get to that end piece, what do I need? Okay, I need to model and scoop some things. I need some materials. There is, in my eyes, like, there's also the artistic principles, of shapes and form, which you need to focus on. But in terms of focusing your learning, try and understand, again, this is that research thing. I think there's upfront time need to be spent researching to understand, like, okay, I kind of get the workflow. I understand the general workflow. I don't understand the components of the workflow, but I can get there. Reverse engineer it, and then you can say, okay, first step, there's no point me jumping to the end of like post-processing and lighting. Kind of a waste of time. You haven't done anything before it. So let's focus on baby steps. They started with a kit. How did they make a kit? They use RGB masks and a macro normal. Okay, I don't know what macro normal is. Let's look at, and you're breaking it down, and like you're sort of doing all the planning. This is how I do everything. I do all the planning up front and the figuring out up front, and then it's just a case of actually doing the task. I think that's how I think that's answering your question. Like, I think you just need to figure out what the workflow is, and then just try to find the beginning of it and start there, and don't get tempted or excited by the interesting material ball and be like, oh, just jump to that. And it's like, but you haven't made the thing these materials are for. How do you even know what materials you need if you haven't got the thing? Like, you need to figure out that bit first, and I think that's where a lot of people come up stuck.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess just to kind of summarize real quickly then, if there's an interesting piece of artwork you're looking for that sounds exciting and you don't know where to start, hopefully that artist has some breakdowns available. There's at least some information to show what the process was to get them to this point. If not, somebody in the chat was asking like, oh, I didn't see that. As Niels mentioned, just DM them. Like, at least I tried to answer people as much as I could, and sometimes would even then post the full breakdowns because somebody DM'd me to ask about it, and I wouldn't have done that if they hadn't DM'd me otherwise. Then taking the breakdown, understanding what the priority is based on some organization system for yourself, like Miro, Trello boards, Notion, as you said, and then just kind of attacking it one little bit at a time. So if you don't have a ton of time in the day, approach one aspect of that priority list, one aspect of that breakdown from the artist, and just try to learn or enhance your knowledge in that area, and then kind of slowly chip away at it, right? Like, that's the only way you're able to build it, is just baby steps, essentially. But even taking any steps is better than being frozen in place.
Exactly.
Rather stumble forward than just be stagnant.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I feel like that's like pretty much the issue for most people. They don't know where they're going. They're just kind of working aimlessly. And it's like, and I say aimlessly in the politest way possible, but it is like, if I say to someone like, where are you going? Like, where are you aiming for? I don't know. I made this forest because I thought it looked kind of cool. I'm like, do you want to be a foliage artist? No, I want to work on Halo. Okay, so maybe you should probably start doing some hard surface modeling. Oh yeah, I probably should. Yeah. It's that I have literally, I kid you not, every single mentorship I've ever had has had that exact conversation. Every time, without fail.
It's a thing. It's a whole thing. Breaking into the industry as intermediate artists, it sounds like people just starting to break into the industry could have a lot to learn from you, my friend. And as far as your process and how you kind of, potentially, definitely. I think you're kind of expressing a lot of things that are, I think people in chat are bringing up some great questions, and it's elaborating further on it. And then we're going to continue to dive into this, but maybe if I will, you guys okay if I share a little announcement for SDA just in general at this point, just because we're kind of on the topic anyway.
Let's do it.
So, Sierra Division Academy has commissioned our good friend here, Mr. Alex Beddoes, to put together a course specifically on this topic of breaking into the industry as an intermediate artist. Now, not going to be for brand new novices, people just starting out. This is going to require some skill sets to be previously existing, but it's about putting together that perfect environment that's going to be your career Kickstarter, and what's going to help you get into the industry and help you put together the process that it takes to create that on a consistent basis. And Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is agnostic to style. And so irrespective of whether or not you're trying to take a photorealistic look, something more stylized, etc., it's a process that can be replicated across any style of art that you want to create in. Obviously, we can all see, and it's part of the reason why we invited Alex here today, was talking about what it would take to be able to get into the industry. And obviously someone who's extremely knowledgeable in it, because he's both been on the side of applying as well as the side of hiring and making those decisions. And so knows and understands the industry very, very well. And so we'd reached out to him. So that's our big announcement from Sierra Division today, and was Alex breaking down what it's going to take to get into the industry. And it's going to be a course that we're offering up in our first semester coming here soon. We're going to be announcing our first academic period, here over the next coming months. So please stay tuned. But At this point, unless either of you gentlemen had more that you wanted to comment on in the breaking into the industry, I was actually going to get started on some of the questions that we have from the audience, because now they're starting to be a little bit everywhere, and so now might be a good time. But unless you guys had more that you wanted to expound on.
Anything you want to add, Alex? Or
No, I think you've summed it up perfectly.
nice.
I appreciate it.
Greg has a way
so we're
with
going to go
words,
through.
I do say.
He's more articulate. Funny enough, considering I ran 2 podcasts, Greg is far more articulate than me. My Scouse accent is starting to leak in, moving to Liverpool, and it's not good.
I need to go back to the blushing. It's just so much. No, I'm terrible. Been hit in the head a whole lot, but I have a lot of experience talking in front of people, and so I have a little bit of advantage in that regard. So let's talk some questions from our friends in the chat. Let me just go back to where I was here because I had a couple that I was going to track. Nope, still not there. Chat has been busy. Okay, so we answered these 2. Talk amongst yourselves. Topic, favorite barbecue. Now, hang on 1 second. I'll be ready for you here.
Oh,
Okay.
Dude, I can't. I'm not a good grill master, but if someone can do a good T-bone steak where like the bone just slides right out, like that does bits for me.
That's my language. Talking about barbecuing stuff. My favorite.
And now
Okay.
I'm really hungry.
I'm
really hungry.
Sorry to do that to you, my friend. So for portfolio projects, Lo-Fi Goblin had a good question. For portfolio projects, how long should an individual take for a typical environment artist?
So I'm not going to be a complete asshole and say how long's a piece of string, but I would say I would advise, honestly, like, because so I'll tell you one thing, here's a piece of advice, well, you got to be careful what you do when you pick a concept. So like whenever I teach people, it's the same thing, like pick a concept for me, let me see what you think is a reasonable concept, and they'll pick out like this gigantic like Viking mountain valley with a temple with snow and ice and all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I mean, I feel like that'll take a team of professional artists like at least 3 months probably to like generate. So what do you think you're going to do? And it's like, that's not me giving them a job. It's like, you need to be realistic with what one person can do to a high quality, because again, it's about quality. So I'd say how long should a portfolio piece take? I wouldn't spend more than 6 months. And even that, I'm being like, that's quite a long time. The reason I say that is one thing I do pay attention to when I interview people is time between posts. Like, and I one of my main questions is, how long did this take you? Because there is no point if it's taking you 2 years. I'm being facetious, but if you take 2 years to make a okay scene, it's like, well, we don't have 2 years. We have deadlines, and we're in a production. So be aware of that and how that is envisioned and how you might answer that question. This is one of the things I set. This is the thing that will help you with time. Is set criteria for failure and criteria for success. Because one of the things my old art director said to me right at the beginning of my career was, art's never finished. You can always go a step further. You can always add an extra detail, polish something a little bit further. But what is good enough? What were you trying to do with this portfolio piece? Was you trying to use this portfolio piece as a platform to learn Houdini? Take it as far as it needs to go. Have you learned Houdini and generated a good scene? Then stop. Like, don't then say, well, I'll learn another pipeline and I'll add these trees and I'll learn foliage too. It's like, no. Finish where you are and make a new piece and start again. And I think that's what kills most projects and like portfolio pieces is scope creep. Again, as I said earlier, like I plan things meticulously so that I never really have to make another decision to the planning stage. I just do the tasks. I've had portfolio pieces of my own die because I'm like, oh, I'm halfway through, and I guess this would be a good chance to maybe learn how to do some Vista stuff in like Gaia, and I start going down that rabbit hole, and then I'm like, oh, Gaia can do some pretty cool things. What if I make like this other scene? And then it's like, that's where scope creep comes in, or you get distracted. So that's a very long-winded way for me to say I wouldn't go past 6 months, I guess, is what I would say. Like, as a very, very generic benchmark, depending on the scene.
Well, I think you're kind of touching on what you see as the biggest problem, which is people just have big eyes. And all of a sudden they see they want to build a city. And I think maybe just not quite all the way, just due to experience, what have you. Or they just want to really stand out. And so they're thinking, pick your stuff up by your bootstraps and just get after it and just go. And maybe they just sign up for too much versus scaling it back and doing a much better job at the quality of it, I think is what you were saying early on as well.
It's similar to like when you're cooking, right? And you add salt to something, you can always add more, but it's like so much more difficult to then take it away at that point. So it's like if you just start small and it works out and you're able to finish that, that's great. Then like build on top of that if you want to continue it. But if you just like dump this whole salt shaker in there to start with, like it's going to be a bad time.
Yep. I knew Jacob would bring this back to like food and cooking. I had an inkling.
My fault. I brought it up. I'm sorry, guys. Just really poked you right there in the stomach. Like, Anthony Jang also had a good question here in the chat. He was saying, is there a best way to reach out to studios or recruiters if their websites don't have like job listings? Tends to be a little bit shy, and so reaching out to companies and recruiters on LinkedIn's a little bit maybe intimidating. He was wondering what other websites maybe people should use, if you guys had any in mind that you guys use for putting your name out there so artists or other studios, etc., can see it.
I think, I'll be honest, the two places I think is worth investing time. I see this as like investing time where I'm going to put my effort. Discord communities. Simply because you tend to hear off the grapevine quicker. Like, I know when I was very active in Discord, it was like, hey, I know there's a job coming up on my place. Like, keep your eyes on our website. And then this allows you to be like, ahead of the curve a little bit. And LinkedIn, like, unfortunately, look, recruiters get bad rep, sometimes very, very deserved bad rep, but sometimes they get a bad rep. Like, you need to acquire a good like basis of recruiters, like, and also do not just send like don't just send like blind connections because you're just instantly ignored. Explain, hey, I'm connecting, I'm looking for a job. I tend to time it around when I'm going to be releasing a piece soon. So what I did when I was a few years ago would be, I have a scene coming up, I know I'm ready to post. The week or two before, I do a round of like, let's just search recruiters and just find every studio's in-house recruiter, every agency's recruiter, send a connection with the note of, hey, I'm in the process of about to start looking for a job again, and I'm going to be dropping a piece of work soon to update my portfolio. And it just helps like them see your post a little bit more. That can help. But at the end of the day, like, it's having them in your network and seeing job postings on LinkedIn and checking websites regularly is unfortunately, like, it's kind of grunt work. It's very time consuming. I had an Excel sheet that was like every studio that I was willing to work at, or I think I pretty much had every game studio, and it was like, have I applied here? Have I spoken to a recruiter? And I would like have a big spreadsheet tracking it. Have I applied within 6 months? Yes, then I should probably not apply again. I should wait. And I would be very meticulous with that sort of stuff. It's very time consuming though. In hindsight, maybe too time consuming. So build the network of them. Don't be a pest. Like, ask a question. But I have had people say, "Hey, this recruiter isn't responding to me." And I'm like, "Oh, what did you say?" And I was like, "Well, they was, but then like I sent like 4 more messages, and then they kind of ghosted me." And I'm like, you're probably becoming a nuisance. Like, don't annoy people because people can be petty. I can be petty. Like, just don't be a bother. Unfortunately, yeah, I think LinkedIn's probably the best place. Build that network. Time when you're active, right? Like, don't be noise. Be a moment. Like, don't just constantly post nonstop and be just, oh, you're white noise. I ignore you now. You're just always there and kind of irritating. Hey, new work. Bang, drop. Look at me, and then it's like, good. Like, you've made your splash, and then you can move away again. That was how I did it. I don't know if. I'm curious actually what Jacob would say, because Jacob, how long ago was it when you were dealing with recruiters?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, like, I guess I kind of see it, like, I kind of, to a point, am the recruiter in some ways on our team. So it's like I can kind of speak from the other side of it, like as the recruiter, like what are we looking out for, and what is most valuable from the people that have reached out to me and stuff. definitely it's been good. Like I do get DMs from people, and they'll directly message, and it's not like uh, at least from my side of things, I'm not like turning people away or saying like, oh, like I'm not gonna talk to you, or I'm too good for that or whatever. It's more like uh, as they reach out, I'll do my best to at least understand like what they're looking for in a position, and oftentimes it comes down to timing a bit. Like you said, posting on LinkedIn, making sure what you're posting is actually meaningful. When you do reach out to people, potentially doing it around the time you're about to share new work, because there were times that people reached out to me with their portfolio, and maybe it didn't quite have enough in it, or didn't necessarily have something that was what we were looking for at the time, and they hit me up again, not just with the same portfolio, but they said, hey, like I created some new work, I've got like a new piece in here, I'm curious if you don't mind taking a look. Like, I know you might not have any openings right now, but it's always great to have some eyes on it. And the persistence does help, as long as, like you said, you're not being annoying about it, because sometimes it just comes down to timing. Like, there's often a situation where maybe we are about to like reach out to someone, or we're going to look to bring on someone on for another project, and we've seen a ton of great candidates. We've got like 10 in mind already that we were considering, and like that day we're like, okay, like let's start reaching out, and somebody hits me up. It just so happens that they messaged like right at the time when we're about to start talking to people, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect, like let's just move forward from here. Because even with that in mind, even though people had applied maybe weeks before, or months before, right? Like, they might have work already now. Like, they might not be as available anymore as they were. So the people that are most prominent right at the time when you're looking to hire are also like, already that they're available. So it's like easier from that point of contact to then the point of working with the studio. So there is a point of persistence. There is like continuing to add to your portfolio, and I wouldn't say it's out of line to like message recruiters or add recruiters and talk to them and stuff. Just do it meaningfully, and there's always that piece of luck involved. And I know people don't want to hear that, but unfortunately it is
Just
true. And it
honest.
can also be like nice for them to hear that maybe it's not that you're doing anything wrong. Like, maybe it's just unlucky timing sometimes. And so best of luck, literally, to all of you out
It
there.
goes back to Alex's like talking about how you have to kind of just have the goal in mind, because you're not going to see the benefit of your work for a while. Which is interesting to kind of tie that in to where it's just it may not be you. It's just not the moment. By the way, I might get that tattooed on me, Alex. Don't make noise, make a moment. That is profound. Did you practice
I
that?
thought of
That is
that.
amazing.
I
I
literally
was like, oh
winged
my
that on the
gosh.
spot.
Oh,
Dude, I
wow.
literally said,
That's
I said
incredible.
it, gave myself a little pat on the back, like, Jesus, dude, I
Oh,
might have to
I
start
was like,
talking more often.
oh my goodness. Don't
Can
make
we just
noise,
get you
make
to
a
like
moment.
look into the camera, say that, like, don't make noise,
just
make a moment.
You see, you're like joking right now, but I was actually super made up. I was like, Jesus Christ, that sounded kind of right.
That was
That's
profound.
solid. Yeah.
I kind of cocked my head to the side when you said it. I just like instantaneously was like, that is great advice. I love that. So that's perfect. Okay, so a couple more questions on pipelines, and so I'm gonna merge a couple here real quick, just because we had somebody who asked very similar questions. Dag, who's a consistently in our chats, he's competed in our competitions, as well as who was it that asked the other part of that question? Lo-Fi Goblin. And so question was, how much of your pipeline do you think you should share with others? And so one of them had brought up like maybe even share it in your art station to kind of show your creative process and how you went through, but he shared that idea with other people and they feel like no one's going to want to see that. Now we're talking about interviewing and things of that nature. And so it could be a flex to maybe bring up in an interview to maybe even show your work, your pipeline. But what do you think, how important do you think that is as far as giving that information, as far as the effectiveness of your pipeline when you're sharing
Sure.
your artwork?
So I give the same advice to everyone with this. Basically, you should have already, like, right from the beginning decided I'm going to work this specific pipeline that this specific studio uses. So, for example, if a studio for their rocks does a macro normal plus like detail normals masked in by an RGB mask. I know it's a bit of technical jargon, but basically, I think you need one post for your art and only your art. That is where your hero shots are. That is where you might have a whip gif. It's only for your art. It's only for me to look at your art and to see it in a vacuum as itself. I always say to people, have a second post, your pipelines that you are demonstrating the technical know-how of what you're doing. It's the proof. If a teacher says, show me your homework, it's like having it there is very useful for two reasons. A, it is helpful on a kind of, if you're, and I know we said I don't really care about social media, but like it helps with the whole, a second post to direct traffic back there. It's helpful if someone picks up, one of the things that's been very successful for people has been like 80 level articles or experience points articles, where it's like, hey, you shared kind of an interesting workflow. Could you talk about it at length? And then you have this platform to talk about it at length. I think you should always share pipelines. Now, this is with a little bit of common sense, because one thing I say to people a lot is I don't like people sharing their UV maps, for example, because I don't particularly care most of the time. I assume it's going to be good. And if you share it and it's even remotely bad, you're inviting criticism. Like, it's very rare. It has only been from weapon artists I have ever seen UV maps have been impressed, because I'm like, do I think your UV map is going to be good enough to warrant praise? Probably not. But it's very easy to show me a UV map that I will criticize to hell. And I think you've got to be kind of careful with what you decide to show. If you're doing a really hacky pipeline where you're not really following anything and it's kind of messy, you might not want to show it. Like, you might need to get a second opinion from Discord communities. Hey guys, what do you think about this? But this is me assuming you as an artist has been clever and you've planned this and you are following exactly a pipeline that a studio uses. You should share that. You should share, hey, these are all the zoo of assets that went into making my scene. These are the materials I made for my scene. These are some of the cool Houdini tools I might need. These are like the processes and pipelines I used. These are all very interesting pieces of information that give me context to your art piece. And in interviews, and this is the other reason why I encourage people to be pragmatic about this stuff, is it makes you sound good in interviews. Because the first question you always do is you pull up the most recent piece and you're like, tell me a bit about your scene. If you have planned it meticulously, like I'm saying you should, you're going to be like, right, well, I picked this scene for X, Y, Z, D, E reasons. And these are the pipelines. I use X, Y, Z pipelines because I saw that this studio used X, Y, Z pipelines. So I chose to do that. And I learned about this from this person. And you have all of this information to lean on because you planned it up front. And you've like, because we're not trying to be good artists, we're trying to be good game devs. And you need to develop a vernacular to hold a conversation with a game dev. Like, try and talk about RGB masks for a macro normal on a rock with your average Joe person off the street. They have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So we need to learn to talk about this stuff. And this is part of it, is by planning this stuff, you're able to hold a conversation in an interview and talk about your work. So, that was a really long ramble again. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. No, I think you encapsulated the idea really well. I really, really like that. Jake, were you
The
gonna add
funny thing,
anything to that?
and this is not advice by any means, because I would completely agree with you, Alex, about the UV maps. Like, I don't really care about those, to be honest. But the funny thing that I just wanted to throw this out there, because it goes back to a previous point, which is do what you're passionate about, and it might be a niche thing that people are interested in. Is I at one point packed the best UV map I had ever seen at the time and posted it on social media, and it ended up getting like 1,000 likes or some ridiculous amount of things. And it was just because at that moment in that time of my life, it was nice to focus on a UV map and just to pour some time into organizing things and be a little crazy. And people were like, holy shit, that's packed so tight. So, like I said,
but
this
they
is
have
not
backfired
advice.
so bad though. Like they shared a wireframe, and you go, dude, you've used like 30% of your space. Like,
well, you know, if it's not good, I'm not saying post a bad one. Like I'm just saying, if you're passionate and you're good, then it can still like just do what you're passionate about. That's kind of what I'm going back to. It's just a funny story of like ridiculous things can still be interesting for folks.
I feel like this
like
ties
it, maybe they will too.
It about being passionate. Like, and the two groups I see who are passionate about UV maps are weapon artists and photogrammetry people. They're the two who are really passionate about UVs, and then also know how to do it well. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a weapon artist do bad UVs because it's such a precious resource. Same for photogrammetry artists. Versus like environment artists who just don't care because we'll just be like, we'll just match a triplanar material and who cares about UVs is how it can sometimes go. But yeah, get photogrammetry people talking about UVs and like they can talk for a while about it. It's great.
Yeah, fair enough. I just completely derailed tons of great information from you to be like, hey, UVs can be fun too.
Hey, I had fun making UVs once.
Yeah, exactly. That was the last 5 minutes is summed up just with that.
Dude, you can just watch a podcast or something or a TV series. Like, I think it's some of the most monotonous work in the world, but like it could definitely be like a watch something on the side.
Yeah, definitely.
So next question. So I just want to ask, I'm going to abbreviate the Arcana's question. Do you think that the advice that you've given as far as breaking into the industry would be any different if we were talking about someone who wanted to go into a different way of expressing environment arts? So like architectural visuals and things of that nature. Would you think your advice would be any different? And any advice that you might give for those individuals trying to break into the industry, or do you feel like it's pretty similar?
I think it's completely like it's almost industry agnostic. Like, be pragmatic, plan, research, make sure you understand the industry you're going into, make sure you pick a direction for your career, make sure you're doing projects and work that takes you in the direction you want to go in. If you despise making foliage, maybe you don't make an entire portfolio about foliage because that's what you're going to be doing like 8 hours a day, every day. And you laugh, but I've seen people make this mistake. Like they don't really care for hard surface art and they end up getting into that field. And it's like, okay, I've now got to work on my portfolio and work full time to try and get out of hard surface art. I've seen this happen, but no, I think it's completely industry agnostic. Like it's good just advice in general, to be honest. Like plan, research, be prepared for things. Maybe for the recruit, I'm not going to pretend like I know how like ArchViz works and stuff, but I know from other industries I've worked in, like mobile app design, iGaming, a lot of that stuff still carries across all the recruiter advice and community advice. It was still there. I think some industries don't have as much of it. For example, I don't imagine there's a ton of discords for iGaming. I don't imagine, but I'm sure there's a ton of discords for illustration, which is a part of iGaming. I don't imagine there's a bunch of people who have a Discord for UX. Actually, no, I take that back. I bet there are quite a few Discords on UI and UX design. I'm sure those communities exist. I exist in an echo chamber of video game art, so I don't see all these other things. So yeah, I think the advice carries to other industries. I'm sure one day someone's going to be like, no, it doesn't actually. It's so different in this field. And they're going to be like, in the NHS, actually, I think you find it doesn't work. And I'll be like, fine, you got me.
Sure. So maybe it's answer the question as best you can, but I think that's pretty good. As far as the creation process, etc., putting your name out there, I think a lot of that translates across industries, but I digress. Okay, next question. Ninja. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I guess I'd also ask, like, I know there may be a lot of people like looking to break into the industry, and if people are interested in talking to Alex about his upcoming course, like, I'd be curious to know, like, what you think would be good preparation, if there is any, for people that would be interested in taking your course also.
Mm-hmm. The best piece of advice, like, if you're interested in taking a course, answer this question. Where is it you want to work? What kind of project do you want to work on? Come into the course with that answer in your head, because it's probably wrong. Like by the time we start to break that question down and break it, there's probably going to be a lot of things to learn and pick up on. But generally speaking, if you can come in with that idea that you do have like a vision in your mind's eye, you can picture where you want to go and what kind of projects I want to work on. I think that's really helpful. The reason I say that is normally when I say projects, again, I'm going to reference our previous mentorships. I say, what kind of project do you want to work on? And they're like, oh, I think like some sort of like castle in the snow would be really cool. And I'm like, no. Like, what kind of video game projects do you want to work on? Like, where do you see yourself working? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so how can you plan your portfolio and your career if you don't have an answer to that? Or if you don't understand where you're going? For example, oh, I want to work at Embark. Okay, so you want to learn a bit about photogrammetry and stuff because they have a reputation for photogrammetry. Oh no, I want to sculpt everything. I want to sculpt all my rocks. I'm like, okay, these two things don't line up. Like you may need to refocus where we need to go, and that's what a lot of the beginning of the course is about. Is like we really need to create a target that's an actual target that you can achieve. And that's where the research stuff comes in. Like you need to know where you want to go. You can't plan your next piece without knowing where you're trying to get to. Because I have had mentorships where like someone has a stylized weapon. In fact, my own portfolio, like 10 years ago, was like a stylized weapon, a realistic weapon, a stylized scene, some tech art, some shaders. And I remember the advice I got from Jeremy Estrelado when he reviewed my portfolio was like, dude, you're making no progress in any direction. Like you're taking the first step in 50 different directions rather than taking 50 steps in one direction. And that was the big reframe for me. I was like, all right, I need to like figure out where I want to go, plan my portfolio in that direction, and really make some meaningful progress towards it. And if you can start to think like that, and I'm not saying you even have to have an answer to it, but you know, if you're at least thinking along them tracks when you start a course, I think you'll get a lot more out of it than if you come in completely blind. I don't know, I'm just a blank canvas. Like, teach me that type of thing. There's probably going to be a few late nights trying to figure that out. Otherwise, I think. Other than that, I don't think know how to make game art. Like we said at the beginning, this isn't a course for like I need you to open up Substance Designer and teach me designer. It's like no, I assume if you're taking this course, you have a basic understanding of modeling. You know how to author a material. You've opened Unreal a few times. You know what how to make a basic shader. I'd expect that coming in. If you've never made a proper day in your life, this probably isn't going to be the course for you. So yeah, that would be the advice for anyone thinking about taking it.
Yeah, that's just good advice in general. Like, do you want to break into the industry, and do you want to take a course with Alex? Same advice.
Both are good ideas. Both are very good ideas.
Yeah.
Our friend Ninja Floss had asked if we see any improvement coming down the pipeline for junior positions, because he's seen very little available that have come up. And so in your all's opinion, do you think we might expect more of a recovery in the entry level space, or do we feel like this might be a norm now?
Well, I mean, look, and one thing I was saying, at the end of the day, we are free-flowing heads guessing. I have not got my crystal ball with me. I left it in the old house, but like I do think I'm optimistic. Like the way I view it, as we sort of said at the beginning, is I'm seeing a lot of the big studios start to figure out their next IPs and get their like next big projects going. And as that happens, that's normally the marker of, okay, as we ramp up into big productions, we need to now start to build the workforce back up. Because before when you're building new IPs, or you're like, you're still figuring out what we're going to make, the juniors aren't that useful. Like we need people who have experience, who know how to make games, to answer really complicated questions that we don't have the answer for. Once the game's announced, and it's like, we know what we're making, we just need to make it. That's when you need your workforce and your juniors to start to come in and be helpful. So I'm optimistic. I think as I'm seeing some big studios start to like ramp up projects, it fills me with hope. I'm seeing also like I'm not going to say a resurgence, but like the AA scene, we're seeing more games which aren't trying to be like the next Last of Us 2. Like they're not trying to be these crazy, huge, expensive budget games. I'm seeing more AA games, which I think is a good sign. You know, games which are solidly made, they're quality, they're fun, they don't outstay their welcome. I'm seeing more of those, and that to me is good because I have a vendetta against open world games. So I'm optimistic. Is a shorthand for it.
Yeah, like I guess I would touch on a subject that we haven't talked about also, which is like related to artificial intelligence and how that relates to junior roles too, where I know many people are concerned about like artificial intelligence potentially taking jobs or taking like what we do as artists away from us. But at the same time, it actually allows for more potential creators in the sense that AI still can't get the same focused creation that people are looking for when they do reach out to artists. So, you can give a prompt to AI and it doesn't quite give you what you want. It kind of gives you something close to it, but it's giving a lot more people a voice to that. Then they say, okay, I have like a small budget. I've got more ideas because I'm using this AI for that. And then there's the opportunity for like juniors to work with these these smaller studios that still need that more focused creation of the artwork itself to bridge that gap in what they're missing out on from using AI right now, and having someone to have that back and forth conversation with. And so it's actually still also creating jobs for artists in that case where like I said, I know it's definitely a big concern for a lot of folks, but there is opportunity that's coming with it.
I think that's a good perspective on it, for sure.
I think one thing I'd say for AI is like I see a lot of worry about like, it's going to take my job. I don't think so personally. Like AI for me has just filled the gap that like me mindlessly browsing Pinterest slop was. Like I have no idea what I want to make, and I just want to see stuff until I figure out what I actually want to make, and then I can actually research it properly. Like I see some really terrible AI generated like medieval castle. I'm like, maybe I do want to make a medieval castle. Fine, I'll go research actual medieval castles and how I'd actually make one. And that's about as far as it ever goes. This conversation, I was at a panel in Falmouth and had a very fun disagreement with somebody because they had the audacity to call me emotional. We were on a panel and we basically amounted to like we were on a panel and there was a pro and con for AI, and one of the things that came up was the morality of it and where it's sourcing us out from, which is a concern of AI. Is why I think pretty much no studio wants to touch it right now with a barge pole, is because there's always legality around where the art is sourced from. And he made a comment like, well, that's a typical artist response. It's very emotional, like bringing on morality. I was like, okay, fine. I'll give you a very pragmatic response. AI can't be innovative. Like it can't deal with the nuance that goes into aesthetic. Like, for example, even me trying to explain to somebody why I prefer anamorphic lenses versus like spherical lenses, such tiny details which AI just doesn't really get into. Or even dealing with an art director. Like, an art director doesn't tell you exactly what he wants. He tells you, here's some problems I have and I need you to problem solve it. And the best art is problem solving creatively and coming up with new solutions and pushing the boundaries of what we can do. AI can like regurgitate information, but I don't think he can, at least right now. Maybe people said AI couldn't do a lot of things and it changes, but right now I just don't see it like as artists and as creatives offering what we need. Like, it doesn't push the boundary in any way. Like, the reason artists like Simon Stallinghart are so incredible is because they innovated this style that everyone fell in love with. And AI has unfortunately done a great job of being able to take his art and regenerate it in his style, but it could never have first done that style. And that's a big issue for me. Like, every single art director is trying to like find their style and the thing for the projects they're making. AI can't solve that for you. It can make you copy something, And that's where I don't get too worried about it, because I'm like, there's been people copying and ripping other people off for years. Like, it's just those people who rip other people off are now going to use AI to do it. And it's going to be seen a mile away. You can see it coming, 10 years ago, you saw the rip-off artists on all sorts of art. And it's just like, okay, like, you don't give them much attention. You go, cool, I know the authentic version of this. AI is just that now. Oh, I can see this as AI. Cool. I can see who you're ripping off. I'm more interested in the original. And that's how I interface with it. And and that's my pragmatic approach. Like, I want aesthetic to get better. I want content to get better. I want movies to get better, and I want games to get better. I don't think AI carries us there. Artists do. And that's my like non-emotional response to it at that panel, which is very funny. Yeah, that's my takes on AI.
I like that.
Yeah, so I still think like it's not taking any juniors' jobs away anytime soon,
No.
and it may even lead to the opportunity for just more creators that are looking for juniors, actually, in that sense. Which I feel like kind of moving to the another aspect of the same subject, which is I know there's been like a lot of the layoffs from bigger studios, but then with that same sense, many of the people that get laid off from the big studios end up kind of working with other people around them to sometimes create a whole new startup based off of that. And so there's like opportunities there in that sense as well. And then that creates another studio, which then eventually, even though the beginning stages, like you said, are more leads and it's more concept and pre-production, it eventually gets to the point where then they need more juniors on board again, or potentially even interns. And so like as much as things are shifting, I feel like things are kind of just shifting in the industry, and not necessarily that anything is like dying or going away. It's just moving to a different location in a lot of senses.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's been very funny, because especially from like, not necessarily layoffs, but like Respawn, there's been a lot of like their big OGs move on, Stig and Ryan and all these guys, to find their own studios. I think that there's been 3 or 4 big studios spun out of that one studio and finding their own stuff. And like you said there, when they hit their ramp up of production, that's 4 huge studios, which is going to need a workforce. And that's why I'm relatively optimistic. Like, studios aren't dying, new studios are forming. It's just they're finding their feet again and finding their feet for their next big projects. So that's why I'm relatively optimistic.
Kind of like you said at the beginning of the talk, that the industry is rebooting a bit in that sense.
Well, we are at like this. It's a funny thing is that I also think UE5 is probably a bit of a blame to it. Like, I see all of this new tech like Lumen and Nanite as we're having to sort of relearn how to make games again. Not completely, but it's like not all of the old workflows work anymore. Like, you have to figure out new workflows. That's quite a painful process. And every studio is doing it. Every studio is on the UE5 train, figuring it out. All of them probably have their own solutions to every problem. They have their own workflows. And we've got to sort of go through that very painful teething period of this new generation of games to see what workflows are right, what workflows are bad. And I imagine a lot of the slow ramp up of studios is probably to blame with that they were just struggling to figure out the tech. Because again, this happened in the PS3 generation. Like, there's a huge slump when we move into PBR of like, oh, all of our workflows don't really fit this, and we have to not break them, but we have to shift our workflows to fit this new style. And I imagine that's like a huge part of this like kind of reboot, is entering this new generation.
By the way, I know we didn't necessarily set like a time to the AMA and everything, and we want to be respectful of your time, Alex. Would you mind sticking around for just 1 or 2 more questions, or how are you?
Of course,
feeling?
yeah. Dude, you've talked to the wrong guy. I can talk all day. I love the sound of my own voice. It's great. My colleagues are probably glad I'm not chewing their ear off.
Yeah, grab a beer, get some hot chocolate, get a popcorn.
Get yourself comfy. Yeah, make yourself comfy for sure. And so, good question maybe to ask, and this is a unique one. And so Manoj posted a question asking that he likes to make playable environments rather than still scenes. Which option is better, as playable environments take longer to create than creating multiple still scenes?
Mm-hmm. So this is only my opinion of the way I tackle things. I know there's probably people who disagree with me. I prefer still scenes. I prefer you have your shot, your hero shot. You make everything within that shot, kind of like a movie. We make the set. And then if you could find extra shots within a scene, do that. This is purely a scope thing. Now, that being said, it still has to follow pipelines. So the reason we follow pipelines is over the course of production, there's an entire game to make. And you can't have 50 different ways to make a building. You have to have one way for efficiency's sake. You should still follow a pipeline to make your scene, but you're just not applying it at a huge scale. I think that's where people get tripped up on this sort of stuff, is like they make just what's in shot, but then they make it really hacky and not how you would make a game. They won't bother making modular kits. They won't bother making trim sheets or good tilers. And it leads to kind of like what I was saying earlier, like pretty art, but it isn't game art. I have made the mistake of trying to make whole scenes. You can do it. It's just very time consuming. And for me, with a portfolio, I want to see that you understand how to make art and like follow a pipeline and all that kind of stuff. Do I want you to be able to make an entire environment and show me that you know how to like do layout work, lighting work, vegetation, tech? Not really. Like for me, it's cool, I guess, if you want to make it a whole game level, be my guest if you have enough hours in a day. But your portfolio scene is to demonstrate I can make good art and follow a pipeline. If you do those two things with your scene, it could be as a very tight, intimate scene, very small, and it could do the job just as well as a gigantic scene. That's the way I view it. I know other game devs who are a little bit more like, I want to see an environment artist can have like level design chops and show all that kind of stuff. Yeah, fair enough. Like that's a very valid point. Mine comes from more of an efficiency and time, time of the day standpoint.
Yeah, I would say like even from the side of people looking at your portfolios, and to be pretty blunt about it, like I'm not really going to care if I can play the environment or not, because that's not what you would expect from an artist a lot of times when you'd bring them on. Also, like depending on what the role is, at least, of course, you don't expect them to be level designers unless you're at a much smaller like AA or indie studio with just a couple folks where they expect you to be a generalist. That's pretty much like, if that's your passion and that's what you'd want to focus on, then like Alex said, if that's the type of place you want to work at or the type of thing you want to do, then by all means do what you're passionate about. And I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity out there somewhere where you're going to be able to find that opportunity to do level design and gameplay and build out the environment and do all the lighting. But if you're applying at most AAA places, they're big enough that they're going to have very specific folks for each one of those roles, and they don't need you to handle all these different aspects. And if you're doing it for the portfolio piece, and that's pretty much all it's ever going to be, it's not actually playable. How many people are really going to have time to watch a whole run through of the level? And like I don't want to be like negative about it, because if you like it, that could be that niche UV map that you post that everybody ends up liking. But at the same time, like for the general audience, most people are probably going to ignore it.
I can't wait to next scene I ever do, Jacob. I'm going to share all these horrible UV maps where I'm like, I don't care. I'm throwing a tiler on it, so I just maintain texel density. So my 0 to 1 UV looks like absolute dog shit. And I'm going to tag you on social media, like, hey guys, I just want you to let you know, Jacob likes, if you have a good UV map, I get on my little soapbox and be like, me.
Oh my god!
It's only because you like them, Jacob. I'd hate to deprive you of these things that could be interesting.
I'll reveal like all my likes on Twitter or whatever it is, and then just everyone sees UV maps. Just like
it's a lead. Days. Okay, good question here. I like this one. For a first job, is it better to try to get recruited by any company, no matter how bad their reputation may be? Or is it better to only apply to companies that can help us develop ourselves? This is from Nero TM. And I actually have a little bit of a thought on this, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think first.
Very good question. Unfortunately, I have quite a callous response, which is beggars can't be choosers sometimes. Like,
It's gotta
you
be
need a
paid.
job. Like, if you're trying to enter the industry. Now look, I think if you have a choice, if someone says, hey, I've got option A and option B, and this studio's kind of got a really bad rep and this studio hasn't, well, that should definitely weigh into your decision making. But if only one studio is giving you a response, what's better, unemployment or a job? Like, again, I'm playing this with like a level of, I guess, pragmatism, which is like,
Cold world
I
reality.
understand where it comes from. Yeah, like I understand where it comes from. And I think it weighs into your choice. If you have a choice, not everyone has a choice. I know for me, I didn't want to go into iGaming. I don't fucking like gambling, like, but I had to pay my bills. I got laid off. I had to take whatever I could get. If you're in a very fortunate position, and it is a position of, you're very lucky to have a choice between a few options, absolutely, it should weigh into your decision making. If a studio reaches out to you, or maybe if it's like about leaving a job, maybe you're like, hey, I'm very happy at my studio, and this other studio reaches out to me, and it's like, wait, you've just laid off half your workforce. Why would I then come work for you? Like, yeah, that's a very reasonable element to the decision making process. But yeah, like, that's only if you have a choice. I don't think you should die on the hill of your morals about all your feelings of a studio and you can't pay rent. I can't give advice in good faith.
No, I think that's fair. There's the old saying of it's a cold world out there, and sometimes you got to go do the cold, brutal truth. I'm a fan of, yes, the world is cold, but the bodies we surround ourselves with are warm, and we can choose the communities in which we reside. We can choose the people that we surround ourselves with, and so it just goes back to the importance of finding a strong community of people who support you, whether that's in your personal life or whatever. But yeah, I would agree with that 1,000%. You just have to be pragmatic about it and take the spot. If you beggar can't be a chooser. I like it. So, A Yellow, I hope I'm even close to pronouncing that correctly, had a great question about what would be top priorities you should suggest from people to learn to add to their environment portfolio in 2025. So, what would be the top priorities you would suggest to people to learn and add to their environment portfolio in 2025? He said new pipelines, programs.
Oh, okay. I'm going to sound like a broken record. Oh, it's where you want to go. Like, I can't say to that, but okay, to your point, okay, like I say, go learn foliage, and now you want to go work on Star Citizen, and it's like, I'm just giving you really bad advice. Like, you can answer your own question with that. Like, well, where do you want to go work? What kind of projects you want to work on? Like, I'll give you this example. I have never made foliage. I will never make foliage in games. I am terrible at it. I hate it. I am really, really bad at making foliage. So therefore, I am never going to put a piece of foliage on my portfolio. I will use Megascans or whatever content I can get hold of and say in really big bold text in the description, I didn't make this. I'm not a foliage artist. Like, you can do that. Like, now that comes with a caveat of don't then make the entire scene about the foliage, because then it's like, well, now I could just critique you on your lighting and composition, and I could probably put good money on it's not going to be that good if you're a junior artist who's never done it before. So that question, I think you can answer yourself. Like, where do you want to go work? Now, as an environment artist, like, skills, you should be able to make a tiler. You should probably have some understanding of procedural pipelines. I'm not saying you know how to do it necessarily, but you should know they're out there and know what they look like. You should know how to model. You should know what a trim sheet is. There's like basics I think you should be aware of and know what to do. But in terms of like what your next portfolio piece or whatever it should be, that is a how long's a piece of string question.
I would say at least like something inside of a game engine would be relevant. So like whether you lean towards Unity or Unreal Engine, especially as an environment artist, it's important to have engine experience to understand that process. I know each studio may have their own proprietary engines, but do something inside of an engine, and you'll start to learn different aspects of what may interest you by doing that too. Like Alex said, like maybe you start to like share a lot of foliage in there, even if it's not yours. You're like, oh, that looks cool. Maybe I want to make more foliage. Or you're doing the lighting. You may lean towards the lighting of it. The materials, you might lean towards the materials. So at least doing something in an engine can also start to help guide you as to what might interest you once you're in the engine, right?
I just want to expand on that point, which is one which is very relevant because like that example, I think some people might look at that and go, "Well, isn't everything in engine?" I'm like, no, people showcase materials all the time in Marmoset on a pretty material ball, and yeah, you're really good at authoring a material which looks great in Marmoset on a material ball, but does it look good in engine? Does it read in engine? Does these materials blend together? Like I got to a habit later on in my like material art stage of every single render having Unreal Engine versions of it. Like, look, it can look good in engine. I've seen a lot of materials where like they look great in Marmoset, and Marmoset's an amazing piece. You know, it makes everything look amazing. But once you get it in, it's like, oh wait, like this is one of the things you have issues with. I remember in my old studios, whenever we'd review like materials, it was like I don't want to see the material ball. It's useless to me. Like, can you show it me next to some of our other materials which are already approved? Like, oh, I'm making a new dirt texture. What does it look like next to our other dirt textures? Does it look out of place? Is it too high frequency? Is it matching the style? So I just wanted to elaborate on that point because this is something I specifically see in material artists. They haven't got a single material in an engine, and I'm like, that's actually sometimes a red flag for me now. Because there's a big difference between making good materials that read well on a material ball versus actually in games in an environment. So it's a good point, Jacob. I completely agree.
Awesome. You mind if I grab one of the questions myself here, Greg, real quick?
Yeah, please go ahead. I welcome it.
This is something I think that's kind of interesting. Does job hopping look bad in your resume? I know it's advised to do that within other industries to increase pay. Basically, Nabir asking for future where hopefully there's going to be more job availability. If you don't mind, I'll take a quick stab at it to basically say, I think it can have an appearance from the outside that may look like you're not loyal to a studio, so why should they bring you on? But I also don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if you have a good reason for it. So say you end up getting an interview and somebody asks, like, I see you've like switched jobs quite a few times here. Can you expand on that a bit more? And if your answer is to say that you did it to increase your pay, then they're probably going to understand like, okay, well, this guy's only sticking around until like they're going to find another job for higher pay. And so they can't assume that they're going to be able to just invest time in you and they're going to get a return on their investment from the time that they've invested in you. So if you have a good reason, like, okay, well, potentially the project that you were working on may not have been something you were as passionate about, and you felt like the artwork that you're doing or that you could be doing for another project, you'd be able to give like your full self and your full level of quality towards. You're interested in other opportunities that help you to grow more. So like maybe there's another job where you didn't feel it was helping you to learn anything or expand on your knowledge. So like if there's a good reason for why it was that you moved to another studio or you happen to do it more often, just make sure that you have answers for that, and it's not just as simple as like, yeah, I want more money, give me more money.
It's good. It's a good question.
Sign of a flight risk.
I've been on the receiving end of this. Like that exactly happened to me. Like it's because I always time it like end of productions. Like I don't really leave normally mid production. It's like finish production. It's always assess my options. It's always what you do. You go, right, I'm at the end of production. I don't want to leave a studio hanging by like leaving it at a bad time. So you go, okay, do I want to leave? Don't know what's out there before I commit to like, I'm going to commit to the next project. I want to commit to like a promotion. You might say, right, before I do that and put them in an awkward situation, let me assess what's out there, and then I can make an informed decision. And yeah, that again, it's weird. Is this preparation? Like, have a good answer. Like, same to what we were talking about ages ago, where we're like, oh, someone asks you a question about your scene in your portfolio. Have a good answer. And oh, why did you leave the studio? Have a good answer. Like, and if you have to, fluff it up a little bit and not make it sound so bad. Like, for example, I left a studio mid-project, and it was, look, I just wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the type of project I thought it'd be, and I didn't want to stay and not be helpful to the team. that's a nicer way of saying I really hate the project and I wanted to leave. Like there's ways to say things without, as someone used to say to me in our studio, there's ways of delivering the shit sandwich without it tasting awful. And it's just like, just, you know, people, that's a skill to learn, like for sure, especially in game dev. Like, how do I say the bad thing without it be coming across as callous or rude or nasty? That's an art.
I guess it's important to mention too, if you're considering switching to another studio, like what is the reason behind it? If it relates to the fact that maybe like you don't feel you're getting that acknowledgement from people, or you don't feel like you have that opportunity to grow, it's good to be able to voice your opinion wherever you're at. So like if you keep switching studios because you feel like you're never getting feedback, maybe it's important for you to ask for that feedback, and potentially you wouldn't need to switch studios if then like you voice yourself, you speak up for yourself. Then after having done that and you still aren't receiving enough feedback, or you're not getting the one-on-one, or you're not getting the opportunity to improve your skills, then you can consider like, okay, maybe it would be better for me to switch studios. But just keep that in mind too, like as much as you feel the reason you want to leave is completely relevant, and it absolutely is, try to see if you can change it first, and you might be able to, because no studio is going to be okay. So a good way to put this is like, if you have a dream studio, it's like oftentimes your dream until you get there, and then you find that almost every studio is the same and every studio has problems. So do your best to like make that studio that you're at a good one for you, and you'll be able to then like do better work there, of course, and enjoy it more.
Made up of who shows up.
Yeah,
help make
that's
it
a good
better,
one.
right?
I would have heard that one before.
Yeah,
made up
of who shows up. Yeah, you're made up of who shows up. And so if you want to help your community be better, if you want to help your team be better, you got to be the person who's showing up. Carry that torch, right? And it's just, you want to see that from your team. Help it be a thing, as long as it's pragmatic and you're not taking away or being toxic or anything. But I think if you're in a good spot and you have good intentions and you know something's going to be a benefit, lead the way. Lead a little bit by example, and be that person who's kind of carrying that torch to make it better. Somebody in the comments had made a specific comment about your coworkers are the best security in this industry, and that's your reputation. That's what you're carrying with you. Yeah. It's the quality of what you're bringing. It's the substance behind who you are. And so absolutely, that I couldn't agree with that more. Your reputation is who you are, the people around you. You want people to say good things about you when you're not around. And so make sure that you're working with that in mind.
I'd be like blasting horns after you said that, like 100%.
Dude, that's actually it. It is like, that's all the advice to give. That's probably what, in terms of like the questions about layoffs and all that sort of stuff. That is probably the best piece of advice I've heard. Like, your coworkers are your best security in this industry. It's sort of true. Like,
No, that's great stuff. No, it's great. I think we've had a few of those. I still think Alex's take it though. Don't make noise. Make a moment. I love that. Absolutely brilliant. This has been a lot of fun. I'm not. I'm being for real. Jacob can tell.
No, I like how dramatic it is.
Well, but you're not to get some shirts. Get some shirts.
Only about the important stuff. Only about the important stuff. Yes, absolutely. Anything else, you guys? Before I start making some final little things and start to sign us out. Anything you guys wanted to share that maybe we didn't cover?
Nothing from me. This has been a really fun conversation, and like, I just want to say, like, awesome. To you guys, thank you for putting it on. Thank you for like putting this community together. And this has been like one of the most enjoyable talks I've done in a long, long time. And everyone in the chat being active and taking the time out of their evening to come and watch this. Like, I personally appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
I think some people in the chat are trying to troll you about a battle. I see a lot of questions and comments about it, but I'll
Battle is a evil character we did not speak of. He haunts me.
Long live Battle! Long live Battle! Thank you so much, Battle! Yeah, there it is. We're making it rain.
Yeah,
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Do we have like a battle that's inside of you somewhere?
It's more like a Donnie Darko situation. I've got this evil rabbit just following me behind. He just and when I think I'm done and I can sleep, he just pops back up again.
No idea what this is referenced to. None. I'm coming in blind. And so
You don't want to know.
I'm laughing
It's
at
not
something.
good.
Okay,
It's
good.
not good.
Yeah, okay. I'll walk away from it then. God knows what kind of damage I've done to my reputation.
I'm gonna say I'll save you the pain.
Well, everyone, this has been a lot of fun. Obviously, it's great having you here, Alex. We're so excited to have you as part of the launch of Sierra Division Academy, or at least the expansion of it. At his course, just to go over the name of it, is Crafting Environments Career Kickstarter. We're working out all the details currently. This is going to be coming likely in spring. And so you all can keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, obviously, we have our community. Help us make it a warm place because it's a cold world out there. And don't focus so much on making noise. Make a moment. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of this here today. And obviously, we're going to be posting the VOD of this. So if you want to watch it again later, if you didn't catch the whole thing, you can check up on it there. But unless either of you has anything.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
This was fantastic.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you all. Thank you so very much. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time, signing out from Sierra Division. Keep an eye on us. We got big announcements coming. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Alex,
Greg.
thank you so much, my friend. Later, everybody.